Let's say you have a problem and you need to change or cancel an existing airline.
Ladies and gentlemen, live from the West Coast, it's time for Ring Talk Live Worldwide. Your inside look into combat sports. Ring Talk Live Worldwide, brought to you by the WBC, the World Boxing Council.
It is absolutely necessary that we all get together. We work together. We respect each other. We like and love each other.
And now, the host of the longest-running fight show in radio and internet history.
I'm getting tired of people running from me in the ring. Mike Tyson, Holyfield, you a bunch of bums. Stand up and be a man and fight a real fighter.
Pedro Fernandez.
Damas y caballeros, bienvenidos, ladies and gentlemen, coming at you from the multi-million-dollar Sports Byline Studios. Check it. This is Ring Talk Live Worldwide on WBC TV and Vive TV. Straight up, I am Pedro Fernandez. Of course, I'm an award-winning writer. Let me brag a little bit. I'm an award-winning writer, of course, and I won 4 Golden Glove titles. But it's not bragging when you're telling the truth. And that's what my mother told me. Just don't tell the truth too often, she said. Straight up, this is Ring Talk Live Worldwide. Hello once again. My name is Pedro Fernandez. This is your inside look in the world of boxing and MMA. Of course, an hour today, live on Sports Byline, iHeartRadio, Sirius XM Satellite Radio, the American Forces Network, CRN. I keep going and going. But the bottom line is, of course, we are live on the WBC Facebook page. Of course, don't forget WBCBoxing.com, the official WBC website. And, of course, today we're talking, of course, 7 days away, the World Welterweight Championship, WBC, all the titles on the line. I'm talking about Terrence Crawford, of course, and Errol Spence. Errol Spence, of course, a slightly bigger young man than Terrence Crawford. Naturally, will that play a factor? Because size matters in 2 things, pornography and combat sports. This is Ring Talk Live Worldwide with open phone lines all around the planet. You can join us if you like, if you dare. 1-800-878-7529. That's 1-800-878-7529. There's also the text line. You can text me here in the studio. The Ring Talk studio text line is 415-532-4867. That's 415-532-4867. Want to say hi to the guys running the Cyber Boxing Zone up there in Oregon. Straight up, Steve Gordon has passed, but the other guys are holding the fort very well. Straight up, this is Ring Talk Live Worldwide all over the world. But stay tuned for Ring Talk after the break.
Hello, this is Gabriel Ruelas. Stay tuned for WBC TV and Vive Network.
pasa, hermanito?
¿Ya o qué? ¿Cómo andas?
Pues sí, ya estoy listo para boxear contigo.
Con nosotros dos sparring, Luis Torres,
Eduardo Martínez, Don León y prospectos también 18-0. 11-1.
Isaac Pitbull Cruz tuvo un entrenamiento público para los medios de comunicación en su campamento de preparación para su pelea contra Giovanni Cabrera, peleador estadounidense invicto, que será una verdadera prueba para el Pitbull, que ha tenido 10 meses fuera del ring. La pelea será en la arena T-Mobile de Las Vegas, bajo la cartelera de Errol Spence contra Terence Crawford. Pero Isaac no es ajeno a los grandes escenarios y se prepara a fondo para este compromiso. Siempre con el mapa futuro presente, ante posibilidades como Ryan García, la revancha contra Gervonta Davis e incluso Vasily Lomachenko. Pero hoy sus puños se preparan para Giovanni Cabrera y en su mente no existe el fracaso.
Improve your ABs. Get the adjustability in your swing that you need. Go to ripgrippro.com. That's ripgrippro.com.
Now, more of Ring Talk with Pedro Fernandez.
Like Joe Frazier. You'll never see Joe Frazier jabbing and faking and backing up and moving
Oh
aside.
man, you got a surprise coming. You got a surprise coming. You wait till the 28th.
How you gonna teach old dog new tricks? How you gonna learn some new tricks?
You call him an old dog. Well,
no, you still agitate. I didn't say that.
No, he called you. I heard it. Didn't he say it?
What you mean, dog? You didn't call me a dog, so you can't teach
He
dog.
said an old dog, new tricks. He calls you a bear half the time.
I'm
He
a what now?
told me at the camp that you sleep with a teddy bear in your bed. Now, I don't make these things up, you know.
That's what he said.
This guy tells me this.
Let's be friends for 1 minute just to get him.
No, come on. Hey, come on. No, come on. No. This is my good.
Let's show him. Oh, what? Let's show him. All of the brothers out there watching television,
Yeah.
I don't care how mad y'all at each other, when it's come to one of these fellas trying to divide us, we must unite.
Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier actually picked Dick Cavett up off the ground. They were holding him up off the ground there on that show. Of course, that was back in the day. I think that was 1972. They were setting up, I believe, the second fight. Of course, they fought 3 times. The first fight, March 8th, 1971. What a fight that was. Ali getting knocked down in the 15th round, of course, sealing his fate per se. But I thought he was hurt more in the 11th round. In fact, he told me in the 11th round that was the most hurt he had ever been in his entire career, either amateur or pro. Of course, the second fight maybe lacked a little luster, but the third fight, of course, the Thrill in Manila, man, that was a fight where two guys fought until they were on the edge of the cliff of death. And guess what? Joe Frazier fell off. You are tuned to Ring Talk Live Worldwide, your inside look in the world of boxing and MMA. We take it from the West Coast to the East Coast, bringing boxing's PhD, Mr. Socrates Palmer. The Dominican dandy is back from vacation. How are you today, sir?
Doing great, Pedro. Ready to roll, brother. How you been?
Pretty good, man. Listen, Frank Martin wasn't looking too good last week, and I don't know if he beat that guy on points. I thought he had a nice ending there, but Artur Harudian, but the bottom line is, I thought Artur had a hell of an early lead.
I think Frank might have overestimated the Armenian fighter. He's an Olympian. I mean, so I didn't expect him to roll over. For Martin to roll over him. It was a close fight. I gave Martin the edge. I thought he kind of dogged it out at the end. When he took the knee, it kind of like sealed his fate. Maybe at worst he could have gotten a draw, but it's a type of win that a lot of people. It's funny with the boxing community. It's like Frank Martin 2 weeks ago is kind of like, oh, the guy that's under the radar. He's a guy no one wants to fight. Then the day after the fight, oh, we overrated him, so he's not as good as Shakur, so it's like, this was a tough fight. And I think Arthur would probably give anyone a tough fight. I mean, the guy's an Olympian. He's a medalist.
Martin, prime time Eddie Croft, of course, the trainer extraordinaire at B Street Boxing down there, bstreetboxing.com down there in San Mateo, California. He talked about taking his fighters on the road and fighting on the road in different countries and things like that. You know, that you have to get a place near a sauna. You have to have a sauna. You have to make sure you have the right food when you're cutting weight and all these different things. And, you know, sometimes fighters from Armenia don't get that when they come over here, especially. And I have a feeling that had he been properly prepared, he'd have licked Frank Martin.
It's maybe.
He got gassed. You know, he gassed out.
He did. That was definitely, you know, Frank Martin. You look at his physique, he looks like $1 million, you know, and that I think the conditioning was a factor. He won. At the end of the day, he got the W. He'll be back on PBC, and Artem will probably be back on Showtime as well. You know, he gave a great showing, and he's in that mix, you know, in that top 10 to 15 lightweight. The lightweight division is stacked. It's really as good as it's been in the last 10, 15 years.
You know, I'm trying to get Daniel down to 135, but he don't want to go. I mean, I keep telling him the money's at 135. He keeps looking at me, man, I'm like 205. What are you talking about? Straight up. Anyway, hey, let's talk about I want to mention Steve Gordon. Steve Gordon passed away. Steve Gordon was the extraordinary guy that ran the cyberboxingzone.com for so many years, and he passed away, and I didn't know it, so I did want to mention that before I get things going. Now, Shakur Stevenson evidently issued some type of challenge to Devin Haney, or Devin Haney issued a challenge to Shakur Stevenson. Take the fight now. And you know, I remember when Devin Haney went down there to Australia, got pimped off by George Kambosos, who's fighting tonight on ESPN. When he got pimped off by Kambosos, not once but twice, I realized he did it for the title. Shakur should fight for short change to 25% for the title, shouldn't he?
You would expect he would, but it's also a tough fight. I mean, Devin Haney did that because he knew he could beat George Kambosos, you know, in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. His dad wake him up, hey, we got to fight. You know, he beat Kambosos out of the 24 rounds. He beat him probably 20, right?
Come on. You're giving Kambosos too many rounds.
Yeah, I mean, so it was a fight that he knew that he was going to dominate. And, you know, Shakur Stevenson is probably the best lightweight in the world with the smallest resume, right? You know, we're going by how dominant he's been. He's probably been the most dominant champion in the at junior lightweight, and we expect him to do the same at lightweight. I can't blame him for not taking the fight when they offered him. I think it was a 75-25 split.
That's the way purse bids go. I mean, that's the way purse bids have gone since the beginning of time, unless you can negotiate something different.
Correct. You know, I saw Oscar De La Hoya in an interview recently.
Oscar De La Fishnets?
That is her. I mean, him.
Okay. No. Maybe he's non-gender now.
Oh boy, that seems to be in style, right?
No, I shouldn't say that. That makes me sound terrible, and I'm not trying to demean anybody. I'm just demeaning him. You are tuned to Ring Talk Live Worldwide. Socrates Palmer and I, of course, are talking boxing. Of course, Frank Martin. The reason why I brought him up is that 3 weeks ago, you're right. I mean, people are jumping me with calls and little texts and this and that. Why aren't you talking about Frank Martin? Frank Martin's a new star at 135. This and that. I think it was Frank Martin's PR guy or his PR girl, because they sort of stopped after the fight.
Well, in boxing nerds, right? And I'm one of them. We always try to pick the guy that's kind of like under the radar, like the guy that's quote unquote slept on, and we kind of overrate them. I think Frank Martin is very good. Do I think he's in the same class as Shakur Stevenson? No. Do I think he's as good as Devin Haney? Maybe. You know, but just because the guy's not the best doesn't mean he's a bum. Okay. I think Frank Martin is somewhere in the middle. Now, the one disadvantage he has, he's a little older than those guys. He's older than Tank. He's older than Shakur and Devin Haney. So, you know, his time is ticking soon, you know. And I think he fought a tough fight. He was very impressive when he washed Michael Rivera previously. So, I'm not going to jump off the bandwagon right now. I think Martin is very good. I think he's the best known, but I think he's very good.
Okay. Good old Ryan Garcia. I'm going to go back to what Eddie Hearn said. You can't say he didn't quit. Is that a fair statement?
Eddie Hearn is a master troll. He is one of the best trolls in the game. He's very accessible. He does interviews all over the place. You know, Ryan did quit. You know, and you watch the fight again, he did quit. And he's going to have to live with that for a while until he redeems himself. The good thing is that he's young enough that he can redeem himself. You know, he's in that Frank Martin, Errol Spence camp with Derek James, who's a sexy new trainer on the block, right? He's got the guys in the gym. He's got also Anthony Joshua. So let's see what he can bring out of Ryan Garcia. I still think there's a lot of potential in Ryan outside of boxing, and of course, I mean, he's a star.
Time out. You say he's a star. Somebody just shot me a text here, and they said you're spending way too much time on Ryan Garcia. Shame on you. So we've got to move on. I think he's right. I think that one sentence I gave Ryan Garcia was probably too much. Listen, he's trying to say he's going to be a threat at 140 and this and that. Either he went into that ring with Gervonta Davis with a cracked rib or an injured rib, or he took a dive. It's either one. That's my perspective. Either one or the other, and neither are good.
I think he went in injured and made a business decision, and he stayed on the mat.
Then he should be arrested for impersonating a professional fighter. I mean, I understand that the show must go on, but he had the opportunity. It wasn't like Ray Leonard and Hector Camacho. They were locked into this date, and Ray didn't want to get out of it. He could have delayed that fight. They could have put it on later in the summer in the big stadium, Allegan Stadium down there, the Raider Stadium, held 45, 50,000 people in there. But they didn't want to do that. Ryan had the opportunity to still make the money, even more money, but he decided to steal the money.
Yeah, greed is something, you know. I mean, I don't think Ryan is living check to check. You know, he says he makes just as much money off of boxing, outside of boxing as in boxing. So you can't say that he's broke. It was a bad decision, a very bad decision, and even worse that he kept that under the radar from his trainer, from Dan Goossen. Joe Goossen.
Joe Goossen, exactly. Well, bottom line was, what did Joe Goossen say about training Ryan Garcia? He goes, you have to collaborate with both Ryan and his father, which doesn't sound like a winning combination to me. Straight up, this is Ring Talk Live worldwide on WBC TV and Twitch.tv, the Sports Byline USA channel. Back after the break.
Manos de Piedra es todo un personaje en el mundo pugilístico. Hombre carismático cuya carrera fue muy dura en sus inicios. Surgido del barrio El Chorrillo, Panamá, Roberto Durán se hizo boxeador profesional en 1970. Apareció por primera vez en México, ganando ese mismo año en la Arena México. En 1972, obtuvo su primer título mundial peso ligero en el Madison Square Garden de Nueva York. Su estilo y poder de puños lo convirtieron en un enorme atractivo para los aficionados y un verdadero ídolo dentro y fuera de su país. El primer combate contra Sugar Ray Leonard es épico. 20 de junio de 1980 en Montreal, Canadá, donde conquistó el campeonato mundial welter WBC. Vendrían todavía 2 décadas más de espectáculo garantizado con Manos de Piedra hasta llegar a las 119 peleas disputadas. Ganó 103 y 70 terminaron antes del límite.
I'm Frank Ripley, inventor of Frackwell, the boxer's water bottle. You're watching WBC Live Channel, powered by Vive.
Hey guys, this is Brian the Wine Punch Valoria. Stay tuned to WBC TV and Viv.
With Pedro Fernandez.
The guitar of the mighty Jerry Cortez. Of course, he is with Tower of Power. Check him out, towerofpower.com. At 40 minutes past the hour, I'll be going into the career of the life of Thomas the Hitman Hearns. Of course, I was thinking back to October 20th, 2000. It was a Friday night. I'm at the Palace in Auburn Hills. They used to be a football stadium. It was a beautiful arena. Now it's like run down. It's been abandoned the whole 9 yards. But Thomas Hearns fought that night. Of course, I think his son was around and Manuel Stewart was there. It was a great night. We'll talk about Thomas Hearns in depth, maybe the greatest knockout puncher in history at 40 minutes past the hour. And of course, if you're watching us on Vive TV, you'll get to watch the Tommy Hearns video clips as I speak. Straight up, this is Ring Talk Live Worldwide. You're inside looking at the world of boxing and MMA. We are 1 week away, of course, from the Spence Crawford fight. But before I get to that, we've got a big fight Tuesday. Of course, we'll talk about the undefeated Japanese fighter, Inoue. Of course, he's a champion at 118. Now he's stepping up to 122 pounds. People say to me, "Oh, Pedro, what's 4 pounds?" Well, the guy at 4 pounds heavier is Stephen Fulton. Stephen Fulton's a comparable fighter. He's a decent fighter. He's a good fighter. He's a champion at one of the sanctioning bodies. So the bottom line is he brings more than just an ode to the dance. Or does he? Straight up, does Fulton have a good chance here tonight? I'm talking to Socrates Palmer Tuesday night, Sock?
Yes, he does. I think you dismiss Stephen Fulton at your own risk. He's a solid fighter, and I'm always big on guys that come from the fighting culture cities. Stephen Fulton's from Philadelphia. Okay, that's all you need to know. And as you look at his record, in his 12th fight, he fought Adam Lopez, and Adam Lopez is a solid guy. He's sort of a journeyman, but he's a solid fighter. And in his 12th fight, that's not an easy fight to take. He's fought about 6 undefeated guys. The one knock on him is the punching power. That's the only thing you can knock on him. Like you said, he's the bigger man physically. He only has 8 knockouts out of the 21 wins. But Stephen Fulton is not coming to lay down at all. You look at the press conference.
Okay, Siri just said something in the background there. She was supposed to be off, but the bottom line is she pops off. Siri doesn't work when I want her to work, and then she works when she's not supposed to work. So the bottom line is, I guess paying $1,500 for this phone wasn't worth it.
It's all right.
Okay.
Anyways, yeah, that's the only knock you can make on Stephen Fulton is that his lack of punching power. You looked at the press conference that happened yesterday. He looked good. Like, it's not like he's dying to make his weight. His face looked normal. He seemed in good spirits. So I think he's coming to not lay down. I think he's coming to make a name for himself.
Okay, of course, that's going to go down Tuesday on ESPN from Japan. Now, the other guy can crack. In fact, Inoue, of course, is undefeated at 118, moving up to 122 now. They call him the monster. Thus far, he has been a monster. And there's been some controversy in the way he wraps his hands, or allegedly wraps his hands. Can you go into that in the Reader's Digest version for me?
Okay. Yesterday's press conference, the trainer for Stephen Fulton made some allegations. He basically said that they're stacking Inoue's hands, meaning they're putting the tape on top of his skin, then putting the gauze and then taping it again, hence making a cast. The most recent memory of that was, of course, with Felix Trinidad. Well, not the most recent, but probably the most infamous was when Felix Trinidad was asked to rewrap his hands against Bernard Hopkins. Sort of in the same fashion, it's supposed to be a quote-unquote cast. Apparently, Donaire dropped the dime on that, saying that you better look out for how they wrap their hands over there. Could that be sour grapes? After being knocked out in his last fight against
destroyed, not knocked out, destroyed.
Yeah. But before that, he went 12 hard rounds. A year and a half earlier than that, You know, probably Inoue's toughest fight up until that time.
But boxing still boils down to what have you done for me lately? What did you do in your last fight? You know, I remember Alexis Arguello. I remember the people from Billy Costello, Kevin Rooney. Kevin Rooney went into Alexis Arguello's dressing room and told him, I need you to rewrap your hands. And Alexis was really meticulous in wrapping his hands. It took him like an hour and a half. He went through all that. And anyway, the bottom line is they made him cut the wraps off. And for that, Arguello went out there and knocked Costello out like in less than 2 rounds. Arguello told me he was going out there to get some rounds originally, but the bottom line is it was time to put Billy away because of what Kevin Rooney did.
Billy, wow, that's a flashback from upstate New York, Billy Costello.
I thought I could have beat him.
Really?
Yeah, I never thought. I saw him in the gym a couple of times, and and somebody told me, I remember who it was. I was in New York City. I forget what gym it was, but I was popping off between the 2 guys who were with it. Man, don't get too loud here. Blah 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 blah. No, man, I didn't. I never thought much of Billy Costello. I thought he was a bit of a slow, methodical, stiff.
Yeah, you know, he was nothing great. You know, I mean, my memories of him, I was a child, but I remember him losing to Lonnie Davis.
Lonnie Smith.
Lonnie Smith, sorry. Yeah, yes.
Lightning Lonnie Smith came out of San Francisco, California, actually in San Carlos, and he fought Andy Nance. He beat Andy Nance, and they robbed him. I mean, they robbed him. They did. Of course, Andy was a once-beaten fighter. We were inducted together to the Mixed Martial Arts Hall of Fame about 4 or 5 weeks ago, so I want to give props to Andy at the same time. Straight, let's go back to the welterweight contest, of course. No, take it back. Inoue and Fulton, make a prediction.
Well, now I don't want to. I'm not a flip flopper, but you know, like I said, I think Fulton has a great chance. He's a plus 340, or it was rather Inoue is a favorite at minus 340. It's a lot to ask for someone to go into someone's hometown. Yes, he's a physically bigger guy, but Inoue is fighting at home. I think that the lack of punching power is going to hurt him, and I'm picking Inoue to win late stoppage in a very good fight. I think Fulton will have his moments, but I'm picking Inoue to win somewhere between the 9th and 10th round knockout.
You know, this week was the anniversary of July 1987. Mike McCallum stepping up to superstardom and knocking out Donald Curry. Of course, I think it was in the 8th round in Las Vegas. It was a great fight without a doubt. But going into that fight, McCallum was a 2.5-to-1 underdog. A 2.5-to-1 underdog. So I convinced my cheaper than my grandfather, they call him grandpa. My stepfather was the cheapest guy on the planet. I convinced him to put $200 on Mike McCallum at plus 250. He did this a day and a half before. He didn't sleep for 36 hours. I mean, he's old school. You know what I mean? He's really old. $200. He got $750 back, but when he got to $750 back, you should have seen him. He was strutting around Caesar's Palace.
I hope he gave you a cut, brother.
No, man, I miss him. I miss them both. Of course, he and my mother straight up. So let's talk about the Spence and Crawford fight. Of course, that's a week away. The welterweight championship. Both guys are undefeated. Is it going to be whether Spence can fight at 147 anymore? Is that what's going to make this competitive or not? Because if he goes weight drained, he's probably going to lose, right?
That's definitely going to be a factor because Errol is the bigger guy. I remember he debuted at junior middleweight. My thing is this: I went on Ticketmaster yesterday, and there are plenty of seats. I've heard people say, "Oh, it's going to be a last-minute thing."
No,
it's a week away, and this is supposed to be, quote unquote, fight of the year. There's hundreds of seats, and you can do this experiment. You put in from the cheapest to the most expensive, and you order like 10, you'll get a block row of 10. Something not clicking.
You couldn't do that with Davis and the aforementioned Ryan Garcia, though.
No, say what you will. There's no star power, and it's a shame because there's two very good fighters. Time
out. Is it because they're black?
I think so, bro. There's no. Let's call it spade a spade. It's what it is. American black fighters. Bob Arum said it. The hardest thing to promote. And he said the same thing about Terrence Crawford. Right before his contract expired, that he lost money on him.
Unless you're Ray Charles Leonard or something of that ilk, I think he's got a point.
Yeah, or if you find a niche like Tank Davis, Tank has that urban niche. Like he's gone and fought in Georgia, and they've sold tickets well. I don't think either one of these guys has that swag with the younger black audience, and that's something that's a key factor, I believe. Neither one is Hollywood. With that said, are they the two best welterweights in the world? Absolutely. And I expect a very good fight. I think there will be a last-minute buy-up, but the cheapest seat is like $600. I don't think it's worth it at all, especially on a lousy undercard.
Especially when you go down the strip and watch it on closed circuit somewhere else.
Exactly. And the IPTVs, they keep growing it by day.
You know what? They shut up. Now, speaking of, I'm glad you brought that up. They shut my IPTV off or some kind of stuff. One of them just went dead. What does that mean? I don't know what. I'm stumped on that one. Of course, we're talking about. We all have the magic stick, folks. For us, the magic stick is just magical, isn't it, Sock?
Oh, it is. It is.
Let's not get into any copyright issues or any copyright problems here with those people. Let's leave it alone.
Yes.
Google it. Have a good week. What time is that Inoue fight going to air? Like 6 o'clock in the morning?
I think the show starts at 6, and you also have Robesi Ramirez on that fight, on that card too. So get some coffee.
Straight up, you are tuned to Ring Talk Live Worldwide. That is boxing's PhD, Socrates Palmer. More after the break. We discuss the career of Thomas the Hitman Hearns.
They really care about you. It's not rough, but that's all.
I am the Tasmanian Devil, 5-time world champion. Tune in to the WBC. Tune in.
A lot of action going on. Myself, I basically just want to concentrate just on my opponent and get my conditioning together.
Anyway, it's always great to have you on the show.
My pleasure.
The marvelous one, Marvin Hagler. says his greatest moment, of course, as a boxer was his knockout of Thomas the Hitman Hearns. Of course, the 3 rounds of hell those two guys went through in the outdoor arena there at Caesars Palace, built on the tennis courts. That was a great fight, no doubt about it. 1985, of course. Wow, I just can never figure. That was the night I met Larry Mertz. It was sort of cool. Anyway, bottom line is we're discussing Thomas the Hitman Hearns. Of course, I think, without a doubt, he was the greatest welterweight puncher of all times. Nobody could punch harder than Tommy Hearns at 147. But it wasn't that way when he fought in the amateurs. I mean, he lost at 132 pounds. According to BoxRec, he was 31-5 with like 8 knockouts. Come on, 8 knockouts. But Aaron Pryor told me he couldn't punch a lick. He couldn't punch at all. I said he walked right through Tommy's punches. He beat Tommy in the 1976 National Golden Glove Championships. But the bottom line is Hearns couldn't punch at 132. And that's what he fought as an amateur, 132 pounds. But when he became a pro, good Lord, I mean, he started knocking everybody out. And he was a hitman. And of course, I was like blown away by this guy from Detroit because I remembered him as an amateur. I remember Tommy's like, come on, man, you got to be kidding me. All of a sudden, this guy's knocking people dead. I mean, he lost to Mike Ayala as an amateur. How good can he be as a pro? Well, guess what? Turned out, as I said, the hardest punching welterweight in boxing history, without a doubt, of course. And some of the guys he beat along the line coming up, I mean, there were some good guys, Alfonso Heyman, decent guys coming along, journeyman, of course, building up his record, of course. But when I saw him knock out Pepino Cuevas for the WBA welterweight championship, let me set up this fight for you. Wow, let me set up this fight for you. Tommy Hearns and Pepino Cuevas are like light years apart in size. Tommy Hearns is about 6'1". Pepino Cuevas is about 5'8", maybe. Okay, and plus Pepino fights hunched over, so Pepino fights like at 5'6". Okay, so the bottom line is you got a short Mexican fighter against a tall, lanky, lean black fighter that can crack without a doubt. The Motor City Cobra, Thomas the Hitman Hearns. So Harold Smith is promoter, right? So he offers Pepino Cuevas a whole bunch of money, brings him down a bunch of money in a briefcase. I kid you not. He brought him money in a briefcase. He got Cuevas assigned to fight Hearns by bringing him money in a briefcase, like $1 million in a briefcase. So Harold brings him the $1 million. I think they did his deal in Mexico, brought him the $1 million, and he fights Thomas the Hitman Hearns. But guess what? He never sees Tommy. He never encounters Tommy. He doesn't know who Tommy Hearns is until he steps into the ring that night. No, I take that back. The weigh-in. He met him at the weigh-in. So in other words, Thomas Hitman Hearns is 6'1", and then Pepino Cuevas is 5'8". He realizes, good Lord, I'm in trouble here without a doubt. I am in deep, deep trouble without a doubt, of course. And he was in trouble. He got knocked out inside of 2 rounds. And of course, Hearns then began a legacy as a welterweight champion. Of course, that would end soon when he fought Sugar Ray Leonard in September of 1981, of course, getting stopped in the 14th round. Referee Davey Pearl said, you know what, Hitman, you've had enough. And guess what? The Hitman didn't say anything. Manuel Stewart didn't say anything. Of course, Ray Leonard had one eye closed. I think that's where he got the detached retina. We heard his eye in that fight. But the bottom line is he was fighting with one eye closed. That's when Angelo Dundee told him, son, you're blowing it, son. You're blowing it. So, of course, that pissed Ray off. And anytime you piss Ray off, like when Donnie Lalonde knocked him down, you knock Ray down, you piss him off. You just do. That's the way you want it. You want to irk Ray Leonard, knock him down, hurt him. Bottom line is he got knocked down. Of course, he was hurt in that fight without a doubt. But he came back, and he came back strong. I mean, came back strong. He was ready to go a couple of times, especially, in like the 6th or 7th round, he got hit with a body shot, Tommy Hearns, and Tommy Hearns started to fail this and that. But he fought gamely, and Ray Leonard, of course, came back and stopped him in the 14th round. So Ray was the king at 147. Tommy was done at 147. Tommy moved up to 147 pounds. He fought guys like Mark McGuire. I wasn't too hot with the guys he fought at 154 until he stepped in, of course, with Roberto Duran. Now, Duran came into this fight woefully out of shape. Of course, he was 185 pounds, 190 pounds, like 3 or 4 weeks before the fight. I kid you not. He was like 30 pounds heavy 3 weeks before the fight. 30 pounds. So if he fought at 154, that meant he had to be about 185 pounds 3 weeks before. Of course, Duran, what did Larry Merchant say about him? He has a problem getting focused 2 fights in a row. In other words, getting motivated. That's why Ray Arcel, of course, and Freddie Bound, his 2 trainers, they used to con him. They used to lie to Roberto Duran all the time and say, guess what, man? You're fighting in 2 weeks, or you're fighting in a month, you're fighting in 6 weeks. And he didn't have a fight in 6 weeks. He didn't have a fight for a couple of months, but they knew they had to get his fat lard ass off the conga drums and the beard and get him back in the gym. Now, back to Thomas the Hitman Hearns. Of course, him and Roberto Duran are slated to hook it up June 12th, 1984. I'm there, Las Vegas, Nevada. The outdoor, of course, again, on the tennis courts at Caesars Palace. And the great Ray Robinson is in attendance. He and I would talk before and after the fight, but the great Sugar Ray Robinson was there, of course. And Tommy the Hitman Hearns had a decided height advantage over Roberto Duran without a doubt. I mean, it was like another mismatch. And you just look at it, it looks like Pepino Cuevas coming the second time. And it was Pepino Cuevas coming the second time because what? Duran got knocked out in the second round. I mean, the knockout of Roberto Duran, wow, was probably the most brutal one-punch knockout ever scored by Thomas the Hitman Hearns. And I watched most of his fights on VHS tape. That's right. That's how far back I go, VHS tape. In fact, if you're watching right now on WBC TV, here comes the punch. Watch this one. Oh, man, I was there. And let me tell you, when Duran got knocked down, the whole place went quiet. I mean, it didn't. I couldn't hear anything. I could hear Duran breathing because I was right on the floor, right next to the ring there on the floor. I didn't have a seat. I was right next to the ring. So I hear Duran going, and it sounded like Duran was having he was constipated. He was trying to do a bowel movement. That's how bad he was trying to. That's how bad he was trying to get. Of course, he couldn't get up. They could have counted to 40, and Roberto Duran was never getting up. But Thomas Hitman Hearns, I thought that was the most thrilling knockout. But because it was Duran. And then, of course, Duran was, he was like lost. I mean, Roberto Duran was done, right? He was an old man, 33 years old. He's done. Stick a fork in him. No. He comes back and he beats the aforementioned Pepino Cuevas. Of course, they fought together down there in L.A. at the sports arena. That was a great fight. Stopped him in the fourth round. Everybody was there at night. We got to go party with Roberto at, I think it was his mother-in-law's house or something like that, East LA. It was really, really cool because Duran at one point in time was scorned by the boxing community. Of course, after the No Mas fight, nobody wanted to see him. Nobody wanted to talk to him. Of course, he built his reputation back up first by beating Cuevas because he beat the other guys you beat were non-entities. But when you beat Cuevas, that was a former champion, a Mexican champion. Of course, that sort of brought his name back to significance. And then when Tony Ayala, the rapist, the dead rapist from San Antonio, Texas. Now people say, why would you say that Pedro was a dead rapist? Because he was. He went to jail for that. He went to jail for rape. He was not a good guy. He just wasn't. He expand on it? Okay. Tony Ayala was ranked number 1 by the WBC and everybody else at 154 pounds. He was killing everybody. He was a monster, okay? And then on New Year's Eve, 1982 to 1983, he decided he was going to sexually assault his neighbor. And I'm talking about his neighbor. He lived in San Antonio. Evidently, his neighbor lived in the condo next to him. He broke into her condo. He took his sweat socks off and stuffed them in her mouth and then sexually assaulted her for like a few hours. I kid you not. So anyway, he goes to jail for that. Right on. Sexual predators need to go to jail, right? So he goes to jail and then he gets out. So he comes on this show, and I'm not too happy about that. But somebody said to me, "Get Tony L on the show. You can kick his ass on the air if you want." Blah blah blah. So I got him on the show. I was a bit pretty middle of the road with him, being an ex-cop and a sexual predator. I was pretty middle of the road with him. So blah 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 blah. We're going back and forth, and he says, "Yeah, I'm never going to disgrace the Ayala name." And then about 6 or 8 months later, he's caught up with some girl in the gym. He's trying to sexually get together with some girl in the gym. He tries to set up a meeting with a girl in the gym that's like 12 or 13 years old at a motel. That's Tony Ayala. So when he died, it wasn't soon enough. Sorry about that. I had to go there. Anyway, back to the Thomas Hitman Hearns, Roberto Duran, Ray Robinson. I'll never forget what Ray Robinson told me the day after Duran gets knocked out brutally. I mean, he got knocked out so bad that I went back to my room at the Aladdin Hotel, which was right across the hall from Sugar Ray Robinson, coincidentally, and him and his wife, Millie. May they both rest in peace. Anyway, so when I went back to the hotel that day after the fight, I was sort of like, I wasn't thinking too well. I didn't know what to do. I mean, it's not. I could see Tommy Hearns knocking Roberto out, but not almost killing him. I mean, Roberto was damn near comatose there. I could. That's all you could hear. That's all you. He was trying like hell to get up, but obviously he couldn't and he didn't. But the bottom line is, Duran came back, and of course, then he beat Davey Moore for the WBA 154-pound crown. Nobody thought he could do that. Of course, Davey Moore sort of spit on the ground before the fight. They've already announced these guys that told them to go back to their corner. Ernesto Magana was the inept referee that night from Mexico. But anyway, so they told him to go back to the corner, and Davey Moore is in the corner, and he's bouncing around like this, right? And they go, yeah, and the bell's about to ring. He goes like this. He goes, sort of spits on the ground like that. And that was the ultimate insult. Duran says, okay, I got something for your ass. Okay. In the second round, they exchanged right hands. Guess what? Duran's got there first. He beat him to the punch. That was the end of the fight. Davey Moore was on his heels for the rest of the night without a doubt. I mean, this got lit up like the White House Christmas tree. There wasn't more of a one-sided beating that poor Davey Moore was taking. And it was sad because it was on the same card. that Luis Resto had physically damaged Billy Collins in the fight prior. Of course, Billy Collins was an undefeated junior middleweight from Oklahoma. His father was Billy Collins Sr. Muhammad Ali told me he was the greatest fighter that never won a title because he was drunk. Anyway, bottom line is Billy Collins Jr. was undefeated junior middleweight. He was the house guy. He fought Luis Resto on the Duran Moore undercard. It was the fight before that, the semi-main event. And the Panama Lewis, the trainer, what he did was he wrapped the Resto's hands in plaster of Paris wraps. In other words, his hands were, by the time the fight started, he wet these things down, and they were cast, like cast, like a cast on your broken arm. I kid you not. And then, of course, he took stuffing out of the gloves. Panama couldn't cheat a little. He had to cheat a lot. Not only did he cheat a lot, he took the stuffing out of the gloves, right, and put on the plaster of Paris. Then he had the special mix bottle. That special mix bottle, he said, no, give me the bottle, a special one I mixed before the 14th round of Aaron Pryor and Alexis Arguello. What did he have in that bottle? He had asthma pills. That's right. They were crushed up asthma pills in water. I mean, he was a genius without doubt. Unfortunately, he was an evil genius. And another guy that I don't, me and him got into it in Philadelphia one time, and I told Don King, I said, step out the way, Don, I'm about to beat his ass. I was ready to go after Panama. Panama to me was the ultimate in boxing scum without a doubt. And the fact that the state of Pennsylvania and Greg Serb, was that his name? Greg Serb, I think he was the boxing commissioner there. He gave Panama a license because he said Panama served his time. What? You got to be kidding me. Billy Collins was damaged forever. His vision was messed up. Billy had an alcohol problem, much like his father. It's hereditary. Believe me, I know, because if I drank, I would have an alcohol problem too, because my mother and father and grandfathers were all drunk. So alcohol is hereditary without a doubt. Billy Collins Sr. was a drunk. Billy Collins Jr. started drinking excessively after the accident, the damage done to his eyes by Luis Resto and Panama Lewis. He never boxed again. He was done. Absolutely done. Okay. So he got drunk. About a year and a half, 2 years later, he rolled over his car in his native Oklahoma and he was dead. But that was a result of Panama Lewis and, of course, Luis Resto. And then, of course, they did it in the Aaron Pryor, Alexis Arguello fight. So the bottom line is, Panama Lewis, God, I hope if there's a hell, I think there's a suite that Panama Lewis has all by himself. I think he has it all by himself. I really do. Because there's never been a bigger piece of boxing scum in the history of the planet than Mr. Panama Lewis. So may you not rest in peace, man. Straight up, this is Ring Talk Live Worldwide. Your inside look in the world of boxing and MMA. After the break, we'll come back with Johnny Sig. We'll talk about the Sunday edition of Ring Talk Live Worldwide, of course, coming to you live on Sports Byline, iHeartRadio, Sirius XM, Satellite Radio, the American Forces Network, all the bases in the world. Bottom line is, Ring Talk gets around. So this is Ring Talk.
Lord have mercy, look in my eyes. Lord have mercy.
I've loved, I've laughed and cried, I've had my fill.
El que deja de aprender, terminó su vida. El que sigue aprendiendo, sigue viviendo.
José Sulaimán!
What has he got? If not himself, then he has not to say the things he truly feels.
Él me llevó por primera vez a una clínica de rehabilitación, como lo acabo de decir. Eso también se lo voy a hacer.
The record shows I took the blows and did it my way.
Did you have an idol in the past, or do you have an idol now?
My idol in the past was Elvis Presley.
Elvis Presley es el ídolo que él ha tenido en el pasado.
Now my idol is Mr. Jose Sulu.
Ahora su ídolo es el señor José Sulaimán. Is your first time here in Mexico?
I came through once, but I can't remember exactly what I did, but I was here once.
Wanna hear you go.
Hundred 36. Tower of Power. Check them out, towerofpower.com. They rock and roll without a doubt. Of course, they've got the baddest horn section in all of music, maybe with the exception of East Bay Soul. You are tuned to Ring, who played last night at Yoshi's in Oakland, California. Straight up, this is Ring Talk Live Worldwide. Let's take it to Las Vegas and bring in Johnny Sig.
Yeah, Pete, there's a lot to cover, man. We'll start off recapping George Kambosos versus Maxie Hughes, which is tonight on ESPN in Oklahoma. Speaking of Oklahoma, next week, man, the big showdown. Pedro, that came up quick, huh? Man, I can't wait. Earl Spence, Terrence Crawford, 12 rounds for the undisputed welterweight title. Man, I am super excited coming to you in Vegas. And, of course, we have Inoue's fight against Steve Fulton on Tuesday. Pete, it's a great time to be a boxing fan.
Without a doubt, thank you so much, Johnny Sig. Of course, Johnny Signorella appears Sunday on Ring Talk Live Worldwide and WBC TV. We come to you live, of course, Saturday and Sunday, 11 a.m. Pacific time. Saturday for 1 hour, live at 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Eastern time. Of course, Sunday it's a 2-hour show, 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Eastern time, a 2-hour show on Sunday. Of course, tomorrow we'll feature the retired HBO Godfather, the Hall of Famer himself. Larry Merchant will be here tomorrow. Richard Sloan will be here tomorrow, talking about, of course, Emmanuel Stewart and Thomas the Hitman Hearns, a couple of other things I want to push it his way as far as his artistry is concerned. Of course, he's the greatest artist in the history of boxing right now, without a doubt. I mean, Leroy Newman was a guy, he sort of died about 15 or 20 years ago, but since then, it's all about Richard Sloan. There's only one guy that can draw boxing as an artist, and that's Richard Sloan. I kid you not. So we'll talk with Richard tomorrow as well. Of course, the retired HBO Godfather, Larry Merchant. We'll talk about tonight's fights, and we'll preview with, of course, Johnny Signorella, the fact that Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford will be like 6 days away now. 6 days away. And why isn't it selling? We'll talk with Johnny Sig about that, because if anybody knows about Vegas, it's Sin City Sig. That's what they call him now, Sin City Sig. Johnny Sig, of course, he comes with us from Las Vegas and that. Now, back to Thomas the Hitman Hearns. I'll never forget the day, June 13th, 1984, when Sugar Ray Robinson told me in his hotel room that even though Thomas Hearns had just knocked out Roberto Duran in 2 rounds brutally, that Duran would go down as the greatest fighter than Tommy Hearns. But Tommy would go on and win championship at 160, 168, 175, even won the cruiserweight title. I think he'd be Dennis Andrews. But the bottom line is, he never really became the superstar after 147, 154. The fight with 160 was sort of like his zenith with Marvin Hagler, and he lost it. Of course, that's it. He was in that great fight, the war, without a doubt, of course, April 15, 1985, but he lost that fight. I mean, it's one good thing to be in the greatest fight of all time, but it's another thing to lose it. Marvin won it. Without a doubt, of course, Hagler, that was his peak. Without a doubt, of course, Hagler would have a couple of fights afterwards, and of course, the last fight, that second to last fight was against John Mugabe. That sort of took all the steam out of his sails. I really do. I think that sort of ruined Marvin Hagler. And then Ray Leonard looked at him and said, guess what? Roberto Duran almost beat him. Tommy Hearns had him rocked. The bottom line is John Mugabe had him rocked. I think the timing is right. So Ray Leonard made his move on Marvin Hagler to win a 12-round split decision. Of course, 115, 113. Straight up, this is Ring Talk Live Worldwide. You're inside looking at the world of boxing and MMA. Of course, when we come to you live on Sports Byline, of course, from the studios. I want to thank my man, Daniel Ogden, the great producer. And, of course, want to thank the people in Texas with Vive TV and WBC TV. I'm talking about Double J, John Jackman, and his lovely wife, Daniela. Straight up, this is Ring Talk Live Worldwide. If you don't know it by now, you need help.